guys were in college in the US, worked there. For some reason decided, not for you, you wanted to come back. Maybe let's just start with that. How did that happen? And then from there, how did the BSc story start?
Sure. So I went to school in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, studied econ and poli-sci, and unlike most of my friends who ended up getting into banking or consulting, I always knew that life wasn't for me. So I just packed my bags after graduation, moved up to California, and started working for a company called BCBG Max. It's a large women's-wear label. And I spent roughly 5 years there, but on the strategy operations side. Decided to move back to India to do my MBA around 2009. At that point, thought that private equity was the life for me. Did that for a couple of years and then realized I wanted to start my own business and rather work on growing my own business and helping other people do theirs. And honestly, BSc just started off as it was a bit of a coincidence. So I had a personal problem. Nothing off the rack fits me. I had to get stuff tailored, and when I started that here, it was a very fragmented market. There's no brand built around it, no experience, no consistent promise. And I thought there was something there. And honestly, the model was also born out of a few constraints. I had no capital, so I started with a few $1,000s, which means I didn't have money for inventory, which means I had to make to order, which means there was no fabric inventory. Everything was on a just-in-time basis. And that's kind of how we just evolved. We evolved from there. As Sandeep mentioned earlier, I think there's benefits of the model, externalities, like no wastage. I don't know how many of you guys know, but apparel is the second or third largest contributor to environmental waste because most of it either gets burnt or put into landfills. And like I said, so a lot of it is born out of constraints, but does have its positive externalities. And yeah, it's tough, right? It's tough to make the order, to scale that. There's a reason why not many companies have done that. For us, it's taken us, I think, almost 10 years to perfect the model, from the supply chain, from the front end. Because hard things take time, and I think we've reached that inflection point now, so hopefully the fun part of the journey starts now.
I think one of the interesting things was we were really talking about slow fashion versus fast fashion. Yeah. And I think a world that's been driven by faster, give me the Shein, give me all this, there's a logic for being different to that. And I think that's what we're really playing up on there.
Yeah, I think it's counterintuitive, right? We look at the pyramid here, we're focusing at the top of it, right? So the market size is not very large. We're not exactly the cheapest brand you'll find. It's I guess you'd call it somewhat expensive. I think our focus is on repeatability. So if you may have a smaller TAM, but if you put out a good product and service and you get customers to repeat, there's still a large business to be had there. So it's a very operationally focused business, a lot of heavy lifting, but yeah, so it's a different way to grow things.
So Rishabh, when we look at commute, I think we had a thought early on that you've got Uber, you've got Ola, putting more people in cars, just adding more mess on the roads. But the reason this makes some sense in India, especially someplace, let's start with Bombay first, but there are many other hubs like that. Can you talk a little bit about the nature of the way in which people live and the way in which people commute that makes it conducive to be unbustling?
Yeah, I think in one of our first meetings with Lightbox, there was a quote in our presentation, which was by the mayor of Bogota, where he says, developed country is not one where the poor have cars, it's where the rich use public transportation. And when we started, I was 23, straight out of college. I was working at Nariman Point for BCG, and you had two options. You could either take an Uber or an Ola, which was expensive but comfortable, or you could get into the local train. I think someone mentioned that, which costs a few cents, but you'll reach office smelling of 4 other people, because we actually have a term, which I found out, which is super dense crunch load, which is what the local train density is at peak hours. It carries 8 times super dense crunch load. It carries 8 times the amount of people that it's rated for. 8 people die every day using the Mumbai local train because they are hanging. We don't have doors. I don't know if you've seen our trains. We don't have doors. We don't have doors because the load is so high that people actually hang outside.
You're doing the double other doors.
Actually, thank you for telling us.
Sit in the train, don't hang.
And so. And it's the weekends.
Yeah.
But so that's the second option, and we were like, so we believe that there is something uniquely Indian, which is that we have very high densities. If you look at our cities, Bombay is the densest sort of city in the world, but we don't have the public transportation infrastructure to support it. And obviously by then India started using apps to book cabs, but we said that that's not the solution because of how dense the city is. So can we get shared mobility using the convenience of technology to move people from point A to point B? And that's how sort of the idea was born. It was basically a problem that we faced ourselves. And when we started, it was actually more designed more mass market. So we were targeting the people who were going in the trains and in the sort of city buses. But we realized that the person who's actually driving has the same problem. No one in India enjoys their commute. It's the most spoken about, low NPS category at office. It's what the most water cooler conversations are about. It's you could ask anyone, and it's like satisfaction is going to be very low. So we said, "Okay, can we design a service for the person who's actually driving?" So, and what does that mean? So that means you need to pick them up close to from their home and drop them close to their office, so they're not wasting time the first and last mile. You need to have multiple options to give them the flexibility to leave whenever they want. You need to have few stops, so you need to go direct because you don't want to lose time in the journey itself, and you need to make it comfortable. So we using data, we look at the dense residential hubs, connect them to dense commercial hubs where there's a lot of traffic. We run usually more than 10 or 15 buses over a span of 2 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening, so we get a bus every 10 minutes. And through the app, we offer tracking, free rescheduling, free cancellation, and no stoppages along the way. So there are routes where we've actually seen data where it's actually faster than your car, which is counterintuitive because it's a bus, it's a 35-seater. Because the amount of time that you spend looking for parking in a city like Mumbai would offset the extra time that a larger vehicle takes. So yeah, that's the sort of genesis of where we came up with the solution.
So the economic structure of the pharmaceutical industry is quite bad. The margin that goes out, maybe we can talk about sort of what that actual medicine costs to make, where all that's lost along the way, and how that is what we've tapped into here. I think in the US, you guys may have seen Mark Cuban started Cost Plus, and they're going after that whole pharmaceutical benefits organizations, GDMs, and so we don't have that, but we have our own version of inefficiency. There you managed to sort of structure it in the government, which is interesting. Here we managed to just keep it outside, and so therefore can attack it differently. So maybe we just talk about that value chain a little bit.
Yeah, we can do that. So we just understand how the market is here, and then we understand what the value is, and that is where how the Zeno comes and really distributes that value among ourselves and the consumer. So what happened is, India is a generic market by law. So India does not provide any patents law to any pharma companies, right? That's why India is the generic capital of the world also. A lot of patents either get expired, India manufactures and send it to developed nations like US. But in India, since there is no law of patent and etc., and a lot of medicines being consumed in India are generics by their nature because the patents have been in US, how to sell those medicines in India? So what the companies started to doing is, they started putting a brand name over a generic name. So for example, paracetamol would have a brand name like, my name is Sid, and I can make my own company and I can start making paracetamol and I will name it as Sirpi, for example. And then they started incentivizing the doctor so that the doctor writes Sirpi. And since the consumer is unaware that what is written, whatever the doctor writes becomes the thing to take. Right?
The doctor is like God.
Yeah, the doctor is like God, of course. They're next to God, for sure, in India. But whatever the doctor is writing, the consumer is going even at 10 shops to buy if it is not available in the first shop, right? It is so solid demand. Since it is so solid demand and doctor is writing, the company started incentivizing the doctors. For example, a company who manufactures medicine at 5 rupee, or it's rupee cents I can say because it's just only that. So if a manufacturing cost is 5 rupee, they started putting the selling price as 20 and incentivize the doctor. Whatever doctor is writing is selling, such a good business. Another company came, said that why 20 rupees the selling price? Put 30. Because if you write 30, the consumer is going and getting it 30. And incentivize more to doctor so that he doesn't write 20, he writes 30. The company third came, he said why 30? Put 40. And this has started that the 5 rupee medicine had become 150 to 200 rupees with time and with the competition. Right? That is how a generic has become a branded generic in India. And that is where we said that this is not how it should operate. Consumers should know that they are taking paracetamol and it is at 5 rupee, and we can definitely sell it even after adding all the costs at 30 to 40 rupees to consumer. And that is essentially what we did, and that is essentially how the India will evolve also. As you are seeing a lot of things being changed here in terms of numbers and all, but I also see there's an industry inflection points are also coming where as the Western world now operates generic as generic, India will also operate in 10 to 15 years where generic will be sold as generics, or the majority will move towards generics as real generics. And players like us will be the one who are dealing with the consumer, providing them the best quality generics at the most affordable prices.
So I just want
Can I
to.
ask a question maybe about
Sure.
generics? So I know, and I could be wrong, I thought India had this issue about not granting patents for the longest time, and there was reverse engineering happening, whether it was biotech or pharma. But I thought that changed in 2005 or 6.
It's
Now they've
changed
become
to
innovations, right?
no, so that has changed. Even the patent rights are not there. They have just come up with 3 to 4 year premium rights. So it is not as a patent which is given, but a premium time which is given, and after 4 to 5 years it becomes anybody can make. Yeah.
What is your plan when it comes to convincing the customers? Because if I go to a pharmacy, or like a regular patient is going to a pharmacy, maybe they're trusted better than just like if you're online in person, just like coming and buying from you. So how do you convince an average patient to come to you instead of going to their trusted source, even if it's for cheaper? But how do you make sure that they believe that it's the correct medicine?
Yeah. So we have a lot of pharmacies which are present right across Bombay. So we have 109 pharmacies, 111 now pharmacies across Bombay. So the discovery of the pharmacy happens because whenever we open a store, we do the marketing activity. So people know that the pharmacy is there, and the marketing message is also that you can get affordable medicine here. Now, when the people walks in, what we essentially do is we always have both the products. So whatever the doctor has written, the prescribed medicine is also there, and the generic medicine which we have is also there. And we educate them that your medicine is not the brand which is being referred, but the molecule which is there. So it is paracetamol, and I have another paracetamol with me. It costs you 100. This will cost you only 30. Please show it to your doctor. Right? We encourage them that they take this to their doctor before consuming. And with this, the trust gets generated. A lot of people go back to doctor when they see that it is from the top-notch manufacturers. They really help the consumer as well.
We had a question for the Bombay Shirt Company. So at least from where my family is from in Ludhiana, like if you want to get something done, you'll go to the tailor that your friend recommended or so forth. So in Bombay, I'm not sure if it's different in metropolitan cities, but how do you compete with tailors, the influence of people sharing their recommendations, since that's often stronger than marketing, digital advertising, and so forth?
So I think it's a very sticky business. So customer acquisition is not easy because everyone has their favorite tailor, their favorite barber, and their favorite everything, right? So getting people to convert is, I think, the name of the game here. That being said, I think the promise is a few things, right? So one is consistency of product. With the tailor, fine margins, you may not get the same thing each time you go. Selection and choice. We have the ability, because we're centralized, to have 10x more than a tailor might stock within. There is machinery, so obviously we invested in very high-end machinery, which is correlates to the output, right? So the better the machinery, the better the quality of the clothes. That's the other thing. And then when you package that all together with the brand and selling a lifestyle, hopefully for us that's what gets you coming back to us. And like I said, it's a high repeat business. So once you have acquired the customer, as long as we meet our end of the promise, then it just becomes a very, very long-term relationship.
How do you acquire these customers?
Well, a lot of it is word of mouth. I think you have to be sort of present and salient in customers' minds. But at the end of the day, nothing sells like a recommendation, especially in an industry like ours. So if you're top of mind combined with good word of mouth, it's going to be a slow burn. It's never going to be like a hockey stick growth in the kind of business that we're in. But I think if you keep doing the right things for long enough, eventually it compounds.
Yeah, I had a question for you. So,
Yeah.
I think you're doing great work of just like providing more transparency. But I'm just wondering, like, what is stopping the consumer? Because you've like let them know that like your doctor is prescribing like a higher priced sort of medicine or like something like that. What stops the consumer from like once they're aware that this is happening, doing future research by themselves and finding the generic brands? So like, how do you keep customers like coming back to you?
No, I think that is right. So once a consumer gets aware that the brand is different and the medicine is different, and if they get the awareness at Zeno, for instance, whenever they have to make a choice of another medicine which doctor has written, they will come to Zeno and ask that, do you have the generic for this brand also? Also, if it is a chronic medicine and they want to repeat it, they come to us. So what happens is, we are making sure that all our cost and everything is so tight that we can provide it at the best of price. So if we are providing it the best of price, always giving the best experience to consumer, and the highest quality product, then the consumer sticks for the brand which they have got changed, or for the generics they have bought it the first time. As well, if it is another purchase, they will come to us. If it is a new purchase also, they are the first choices, they come to us.
In this case, a lot of what happens is Zeno's becoming the person that kind of pulled the veil off of the entire thing and showed them what was possible. So now there's a lot of trust. When all these businesses are talking about trust, I think that once you save someone that money, they then love you. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to just pick your brain though on the pharma industry generally. Like in the United States, when we do valuations on biotech companies, barely any value comes from the terminal value because generics flood the market, and most of the value is when they have patents. Here, you're saying they have a premium for 4 years, which doesn't have as much value as like a 17-year patent. And then you're saying that in 15 years, because you're getting rid of the branded generics, which was the fuel for the innovation because that's where the value came from, you're just gonna have generics in the market. So how do you think India is gonna continue to incentivize innovation if they're not gonna offer any like value creation for these biotech and pharma companies?
Yeah, I think you're right. Currently, all the companies which they are doing are essentially the marketing companies putting a brand name over generics. They're not no innovation which is happening. Right? Innovation needs a lot of money for the companies to put in, like billions and billions of dollars. I think India will also evolve in that fashion, but current problem and current laws came into existence so that the medicines gets available to a lot of people. Right? India, I mean, as Sandeep was showing that how world is changing and how India will change. Eventually it will come where these companies and a player like us or more player like us, which will sell generic as generic, and these companies, when whatever the money they have, they will be either forced to buy market or they will see themselves being relevant is when they really put investment into R&D and do research and make more molecules where those companies should make money. Currently, because of the laws came in 1945, right? So it's quite a time which has happened. But making it sure that the medicines be available to everybody, these are the governing laws currently.
Yeah, so thank you for your time. These are all really interesting businesses. I have a question for you. So tailoring is a service, right? You know, you can only scale it so much. And also, I don't know, at least for me, when I'm tailoring, I pick like my top 2 or 3 clothes and get that done and just use it for the rest of the year. And since you're already like aiming for high-end customers, I feel like there's like a certain ceiling. So maybe like how are you working around that?
Yeah, so I think the short answer, like I said earlier, was the dam is never going to be as large as it is for something lower down the pyramid. The focus is on repeatability, right? So the lifetime value for someone who shops with us, some of the data tells us that if you shop 2 or 3 times with us, you're likely going to be with us for life. So the question is how you keep them coming back more and more. That being said, I mean, we do have loss leaders, so we do start at more affordable price points, get people into the brand, and then over time migrate them up the chain. But that is a challenge. Again, the macro sort of wins out with us in that more and more people are premiumizing. They're looking for better quality product. Stuff that lasts longer, more considered purchases, and so we sort of ride those tailwinds a little bit. But yeah, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that every customer that we do acquire, we retain. So
my question is also for you, for BSC. So you mentioned, repeatability, but I guess and like higher price point. So I guess is the differentiation on the brand side, like from, like say like a Lacoste or a Ralph Lauren, or now you're a BSC, right? It's just another premium brand that serves the premium market, or is there something in your stack or like that we're utilizing tech to gain an advantage over these other premium competitors?
yes, there's 2 parts. So I'll talk about the brand side first, and then I'll go to the infrastructure side of it. So when we started this 10 years ago, there was a white space for a brand that spoke to a younger demographic. So there are a lot of formal wear shirt brands that spoke to our dads and our grandfathers, but there was no one really talking to someone our age. He's my age at the time.
You can't put yourself.
Yeah, not anymore.
That's right.
And so just taking a different tone, different approach to that, even offering a selection that catered to a slightly younger audience, that allowed us to set ourselves apart a little bit. Even the incumbents weren't even looking at digital as a channel for building their brands, and so it was quite easy for us actually to break through that. But coming to the second part of the question, which is around infrastructure, I think that was probably the single hardest thing for us to build out. And I mentioned earlier, it took us 10 years to get to a point where we could really scale. And Sandeep knows this because they spent the first 5 years of their investment waiting for the infrastructure to be built. And there's 2 sides to that. One is the technology. You don't expect a clothing brand to really be technology driven. But to make thousands of pieces a day, all different customizations, measurements, etc., requires a lot of standardization on the tech. You've got 25 stores across the country, you've got a website, you've got an app, all taking on measurements, customizations, feeding to multiple factories that then produce them real time, which also feeds into, let's say, fabric inventory, which is ordered from suppliers on a just-in-time basis. It's very, very elaborate. I spent an hour talking about it. And that took years of building out. The CRP took a lot of capital to build it out. And the other side of it is the supply chain itself. How do you make sure you put out a consistent product over and over again? It requires, again, very intricate planning from a machinery standpoint, how many factories you work with. So we work on a hub and spoke model where all the value-added parts of the supply chain are centralized, and then the spokes to sort of the commoditized part of the product, which is more just the cutting and sewing of it. But then just the entire planning around the labor, the machinery, how this hub and spoke works in a timely fashion. Remember, it takes almost 6 or 7 days for you to get the order, and I think that's like the limit that people are willing to wait. To receive a product, but today you can get stuff in 15 minutes. 7 days is a long time. So to make sure all this comes together, it took years of, like I said, technology, supply chain planning, and investment in it before we could really scale it.
I want to talk a little bit about the tech in Cityflo and also the comparison and maybe contrast with the airline industry. Because we went and had a couple of conversations with the CASA, we've tried to understand. So you would think about this, it's a bus. How complicated can it be, right? Put the bus on the road, put some people on the bus, grab the bus, right? Maybe you talk a little bit about how you think about pricing, how you think about tech, how you think about optimization, because it is down to a revenue per seat and a cost per seat. So maybe just shed some light on that.
So I think the tech has two aspects, and I think it's like an iceberg. I think the visible aspect and the easy to understand aspect is the consumer-facing tech, right? We have the app, so you have the booking platform, you have the tracking platform, and you can have passenger authentication, etc., which is on the app. And then there's the 90% of our tech, which is actually our operations, which is how do you ensure that the buses leave on time, they're following the route that they were supposed to in terms of the punctuality, how do you ensure that they're always available when it's scheduled, how do you ensure that the bus quality is what you promised, how do you minimize the amount of breakdowns, etc. As well as even before that, if you think about what are the routes that you want to design, so where is the passenger coming from, where do they want to go, what is the time that they want to travel. And then most importantly, what you spoke about, which is something that we're getting really into right now, is how do you fill the bus to its maximum capacity and how do you extract, because the bus seat is the most perishable item that there is, right? It's like milk, because once the bus leaves and the seat is empty, I can't make any money off it. And every day I have like 20,000 seats and I have to ensure that they keep selling. And the revenue per seat is basically the fare that I'm charging per person into the occupancy percentage of the bus. So how much of my bus is filled into how much is each person
And
paying.
into also all the other revenue you might generate around that.
And the additional revenue that's possible. And it's a clear price elasticity problem, right? The higher I charge per person, the fewer people are likely to use the service. So what is the optimum price point that maximizes not the occupancy, but actually the revenue per seat?
It's a bit very systems engineering. I did systems engineering, which apparently doesn't exist anymore at Penn, which is unfortunate. So didn't help you finish that.
Yeah, and the most mature industry in this is the airline industry. And we have to be careful, we can't be very dynamic because it is commute, which is a daily service. Our average customer uses Cityflo about 20 times a month. Average like span that he's going to spend with Cityflo is probably 40 years, which is his career. Our retention rates are very high. So, but at the same time, we need to be, I would say, demand responsive, but not dynamic.
Yeah, so wondering how you approach surge pricing. You said it's kind of like a double-edged sword where you don't want to be too dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Because then customers might feel like you're taking too much profit. Just like wondering how you think about that. Is that all empirical, like model-based? How do you go about developing that, thinking about that?
Yeah, so we explore, so one nuance of our business that I spoke about is 70% of our users are on the subscription, where they're booking for the entire month. So you can't have surge pricing in the sense where every time you open the app it's priced differently. Of course you can for the remaining 30% who are not using it as frequently, they're using it for those one-off use cases. But because that's targeted only towards 30%, it's not going to move the needle on what you're offering. What we've instead sort of started, the direction that we've taken is that you start differentiating your product. So how do you differentiate a bus seat, right? It's almost like a commodity. And the answer lies in the unbundling. So for example, there are a few things that some people may want and some people may not want. So we offer, so our best product is a Flexi Pass, which allows you free cancellation. So you can cancel, you're booked on the bus on the same seat for the entire month. And if you're not traveling today or you're going somewhere else, you can cancel the ride, you get all your money back. So free cancellation. We offer free rescheduling. So I've booked on the 7 a.m. but today I woke up late and I want to go on the 7:30. You can reschedule to the 7:30 for no extra cost. And you book in advance, so you're always assured the best seat that's available on the bus. Window seats are preferred to aisle seats, etc. So if you actually unbundle all of these things, so our next product is what we call the Super Saver, which is cheaper than the Flexi Pass, but allows you only 2 cancellations. So we're assuming you're going to have to travel with us every day. And then the next product is called the Cityflo Lite, which is you don't get any cancellation. You will pay if you want to reschedule, and you'll be allowed to book in the last 1 hour. So it's like the last hour where whatever seat's available, that's what you're going to have to book. We're going to assign you a seat, and if you want to change the seat, you're going to have to pay. So we're really in one bus, which has 35 seats, creating different tiers of the offering to actually differentiate what is the customer cohort that you're going after. Because you basically, it's like a 2x2. You have customers who want to use the service a lot and versus they don't want to use it that much. And then you have the price sensitivity. That there's people who are very price sensitive and there's people who are not that price sensitive. So how do you ensure that you're targeting every quadrant of this sort of matrix while actually just offering a home to office service?
My question was for Zeno. Do you guys already have like labs where you guys manufacture the medicine, or do you outsource it, or how does that process look like? And my second question was more about the business model. Because for example, Cost Plus, it is well known that they just take the cost plus like some of the pharmacy fees plus 50% and that's it. So yeah.
Yeah, so for the first question, India has a great capacity to manufacture high quality medicines, right? All the companies in India who are even doing the branded generic, they get it manufactured from contract manufacturers. So we have a very great manufacturing facilities in India. So you don't have to do any of your innovation or you have to do any testing, anything. What we need to do as a company, what we do is we have an audit team, a quality check team, right? That is what we have built in-house. And then we identify the topmost manufacturers, we do the quality check, we do the check of quality on every batch we manufacture and all these things, all the processes we follow. But we go and get it done on a contract basis rather than having our own capacity. The second question is on the price point, that how do we price it, right? We started long back, and that time we started in a sense that we want to make certain margin, and that's it. And that is how we also did. So let's say if I buy a medicine at 20 rupees, I want to sell it at 30 rupees. Right? I'll just multiply it by 1.5, and then we will figure out all the cost into it and make profit eventually. And that has set us some standard of the prices. And then now with more evolvements, what we have figured is if we are providing, if any branded generic medicine is there, if it is 100 rupee, in that also some discounts goes, and let's say it lands at 85 rupees to consumers. What we see that if we can have 40 to 45 rupees for a medicine, now if that much price delta is being created, our consumers really adopt it. So now we are moving backwards on what is the branded price, and in that how much saving which we can pass to consumers, and that is how we do the pricing. It has not been like a cost plus structure. However, it started as a cost plus structure, then it became some prices which are like, these are the prices, and now we are trying to maintain those prices and only escalating it at a certain percentage every year.
So when it comes to traffic and also the social stigma of like if you're trying to reach out to like the upper middle class when it comes to traveling in buses, firstly, how are you going to deal with that? And secondly, how do you show your competitive advantage over probably like a ride sharing like taxi or like a van over like a bus, which would take more time, would have to go to different places to pick up like more people, so more time, not reaching office on time? How do you deal with all of that?
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting question, right? So the first thing is that in terms of like how do we convert customers, that's fundamentally the question. There's definitely a stigma associated with the bus. The way we broke it in our early days is that we started using Mercedes-Benz buses. So, it's simple, right? You have your Hyundai car or you can go in a Mercedes bus. Now, we've been in the market for the last 10 years. At least in Bombay, Cityflo is a brand in itself because people know about it. And people know that the buses, we were the first, in terms of the bus design, this is a little technical, but the buses look good on the road. And they didn't look like any of the other buses. They were fully white. They looked like clean, and it would draw your attention when it was on the road. And then that helped. And then the other OEMs have obviously now caught up to it. But that's how we solved it initially. The second thing that worked for us was, and this was not intentional, but 90% of our acquisition today is still organic. It's, because commute is a very widely spoken about topic in office. It's probably one of the most discussed topics, right? Because how like you're like, oh, I got stuck in heavy traffic. This new, like somebody said, every week there's a new road in the city that's going to be on your route that's stuck up. And people are going to be like, oh, it took me 15 minutes. And then someone's going to say, hey, why don't you try this service? I had an interesting anecdote where I was at a party. It was my friend's birthday and I was there. And one of his friends was talking about Cityflo. And I was like, oh, you're talking about Cityflo, what's that? They're like, oh, there's this bus service, it's really cool, it picks you up from your home, drops you to your office. And here, give me your phone, I'll download it for you. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take my phone. And then at some point my friend's like, wait, you know that he started it, right? She's like, oh, you started it. Okay, and then there's a list of questions, which is, why don't you put this as a pickup point? This is so close to my home, and whatever feedback that they have. But it's very widely discussed, which is what helped us. In terms of, now my second question was in terms of, how do you convince people in terms of the traffic, etc. I think that people understand. What we realized we had to solve is, if you pick them up on time, then it doesn't matter how long it's going to take, because they know that the conditions are variable. So and the way we solve that is you have few stops, just a few stops within a certain distance, and then the bus goes directly to where it has to. And I think this is unique to India, where the distances are very large. So our buses on average travel 20 miles or 35 kilometers, and our stops are only in the first 5 kilometers. And that allows us to maintain the punctuality for all the pickups, and then that sort of solves the traffic sort of issue. It's not like we don't get complaints. Obviously, people will still complain, and it is something that you have to address. But having ETA, having predictability, and the free rescheduling really addresses a lot of those issues.
So does the ETA really work? Now that we've spent a week on buses, forget Bangalore. ETA has become a
Yeah, so we actually, and that was something we really invested in, we use our own ETA, we don't use Google, because Google doesn't work for Indian roads and doesn't work for buses for sure. But because we have a network of 300 buses, we know how much time the bus is going to take. So we have our own predictability system, which I would say is fairly accurate.
My question is for the Bombay Shirt Company. So I saw that you have your 100% fit guarantee, and then up to 30 days you can return it from your home, get it tailored again, and sent back. So I was wondering how does all that factor into your pricing, and if that's and do your margins account for that? And if so, is it a significant portion?
Yeah. So just for context, 80% of what we make is customized, and so cannot be used for anybody else. That being said, our return rate is only 1%.
And the apparel industry in general
it's anywhere from 20 to 25% in the apparel industry. And there's two sides to it. One is that when you're buying a customized product, it's a considered purchase. So you're not just shopping around and returning 20% of what you buy. You actually need to keep it, right? And I might sound like a broken record, but again, it just comes back to the product and service. If you're not going to get that right, the rates are going to be in that 15 to 20%. At the moment, we don't actually price it in, because historically, that 1% return rate has held for the last 3 odd years, and so we don't price it in right now. In fact, we used to actually have a lifetime alteration policy. That got a little bit expensive, because I cannot control when someone puts on versus weight, and then people coming back 2 years later and ordering 20 shirts, and that got a little bit expensive. So that's something we actually retracted from about 6 months ago. But for the most part, I think for the day-to-day stuff, 30-day return period, we don't factor it in our pricing at all.
And what percent of your alterations come in after 30 days? Because it's a flat rate after that, right?
Yes, that's been introduced recently. I think the alteration percentage within the 30 days is about 12%. So 12% people come back for shirts, and I think it's slightly higher for bottoms, because bottoms is a harder category to get right the first time. And then those who come after 30 days is a very small number.